Hey guys, it's Narissa. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another recipe video. This recipe video is of one of my absolute most favorite soups to make in the entire world. I get rave reviews about it every time I make it for people. I get requested to make it for people, and I always get questions on the recipe, especially this time of year when the weather is starting to cool off. So I am remaking this video. I actually have an older video of this recipe, but I am updating it and remaking this video for everyone. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Like I said, my name's Narissa, and I love to post lots of fun content on my channel, including recipe videos. I love Instant Pot and air fryer recipe videos, as well as shopping hauls and new mom videos sometimes. So I hope that you decide to stick around and hit the subscribe button so that you get notified when I upload a new video. So any potato soup recipe starts off with peeling potatoes, right? Now, this is like probably one of my least favorite things to do in the kitchen. Some people find it sort of therapeutic and enjoy it, and I just don't. And maybe it's because I have made this potato soup so many times. I can't tell you how many times I have made triple batches of this soup for like, big groups of people. So when I do that, I have to peel, upwards of 20 potatoes, and I generally will get blisters, and there's quite a bit of cutting and chopping when you make 3 batches, but I'm actually just going to make 2 this time so that I can share it with my mom and my grandma. So I'm just using regular old Idaho potatoes, really starchy potatoes, and I'm just giving them a quick peel and putting the peels into the potato sack as I go. So about 5 pounds of potatoes worked for this double batch of smoky potato cheese soup. Um, Now, the recipe for one batch calls for 6 potatoes, so I would start there. Once I get my potatoes all peeled, I just put them in a bowl of water so that I could give them a good rinse, getting off any debris, from the skins. And the next step is to chop up a yellow onion. So I'm doing 2 because I'm doubling this recipe. So you want to just give your onion a good chop so that you can cook it up and it will go throughout the entire soup. Now, if you don't like pieces of onion in your soup, go ahead and give it a more of a fine chop than I am doing here. Now, I had such a strong onion this time. Oh my goodness, I was crying. It was awful. Does anyone have any tips on how to reduce the eye burn when chopping onions? Oh my goodness, I have never found any way to do it that reduces the amount of tears that I produce when trying to chop onions. Oh, these were so strong. They were just regular yellow onions. They weren't like the sweet onions or anything like that. But so the next step is to just melt some butter in a big pot. Now I am using a pretty big pot because, like I said, I'm doubling this recipe, and I'm just using my flexible chopping mat here to carry the onions over to my stove. And I'm just going to saute up these onions until they become nice and translucent in that butter. Then I added some chicken stock. I actually added some homemade chicken stock and then topped it off with some store-bought chicken stock. And now to chop up the potatoes. Now, depending on how big your potatoes are, you want to either chop them in half or chop them in thirds. So you don't want your pieces to be too big where it takes forever for them to boil up, but you don't want them to be too small either to where they disappear in your soup. So I chopped them up in about 1-inch cubes and I put them into the chicken stock and I turn this on high. You want to bring this to a boil. So while that is warming up, then you're going to add the smoky part of this recipe to your potato cheese soup by adding some smoked sausage. I am using the Eckrich brand, and actually it's only 14 ounces instead of 16 ounces, and the recipe calls for 1 pound, but I don't worry about that. It still is plenty of smoked sausage in this soup, in my opinion. So I'm taking each of these sections of smoked sausage and cutting them in half, and then cutting them in half again. This puts the smoked sausage into the perfect size for me so that they can fit on your spoon, you know what I mean? But my husband actually prefers them to be a little bit bigger and he likes them to be in discs. So any way you chop these smoked sausages will be fine. If you want a little bit smaller bite-sized pieces, then go ahead and cut the sausage into fours or quarters and then give them a chop. So we're just going to chop up all of this smoked sausage and then add it to the hot pot of chicken stock and potatoes. And as the liquid comes to boil, it's going to like suck out all of the smokiness from the smoked sausage and add it into the soup. And then you're also going to have a little bit of protein in your soup with this smoked sausage as well. So again, I'm going to use my flexible cutting mat and just put it into this bowl and add it to the big boiling pot of goodness here and give it a good stir. And then you're going to want to put your lid back on and let it come up to boil. Next, I'm going to add the cheesy part to this smoky potato cheese soup by cutting up a big block of Velveeta cheese. Now, the recipe calls for 1 pound, but I doubled the recipe, so I added the entire block. But you can also buy the smaller blocks too if you are just making one batch. So what I like to do is chop it up into what looks like a Rubik's Cube and then kind of break it apart with my hands so that when I add it, all of the cubes are broken apart and they can stir into the soup a little bit easier, because otherwise you just have one big clump of cheese and it takes much longer to get that cheese to melt throughout the soup. Now, it's really not that big of a deal, but when your potatoes get soft, the less stirring you have to do, the better, because you don't want to break up the potatoes so much to where there's nothing left and they just sort of melt into the soup. So I am going to check my potatoes before I add the cheese. I'm going to check my potatoes and see if they are done. And then if they are done, at this point, I am going to take my potato masher and mash them up just a little bit. Now, you don't want to mash them too much because, again, you're going to stir in that cheese and you don't want the potatoes to completely break down. You want to be able to, have chunks of potato in your soup. So I just mash about half so that there are still chunks, but then it's also going to be a nice thick texture. Now we're going to add all of that yummy Velveeta cheese and just stir, stir, stir. So again, it takes a while to get this Velveeta cheese melted throughout your soup. So you'll see what I mean when I say you don't want to break up all those potatoes into nothing. Trust me, I've made this potato soup so many times. I have learned the quirks, and people have definitely given me some constructive criticism along the way. And that was one of the comments one time, was that there weren't enough potatoes in the soup, and I added plenty of potatoes. It's just that disappeared into the soup. All right, the last ingredient in this smoky potato cheese soup recipe is evaporated milk. Now, the recipe calls for 2 cans per batch, and I'm making 2 batches, and I generally don't ever add the full recommended amount. So I should be adding 4 per the recipe, but I'm only going to add 2. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper to give it a little seasoning. You definitely don't need to add any salt whatsoever because the smoked sausage and cheese add plenty of that for you. And this is the final product, the best bowl of potato cheese soup you will ever have with a smoky twist. Serve this to your guests, serve this to your family, make it tonight or put it on your meal plan because you are going to love it. It is a very heavy, stick to your ribs soup, and it is perfect for the cold weather ahead. Let me know if you try this recipe. I hope that you do. Hit the thumbs up button if you like these types of recipe videos. It lets me know if you do. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.